This conference will now be recorded.
I think Nirmala, you have been saying something?
You can continue, Pranav.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great guys. Let me just quickly put my system on the charge and then I'll start. Okay, perfect. Let me share my screen and I'll start. So before I start, Dipti, if you can just quickly give a broad overview of the high level things, what we have learned so far or discussed so far.
Yeah, so we started with the first domain yesterday, and we discussed in detail the three steps, that is plan, execute, and report. So I think we started off with discussing about IS audit standards and guidelines and code of ethics and all of those things. Yeah.
And right, and then we spoke about three important terms: confidentiality, integrity, availability.
Integrity and availability. Yeah.
And confidentiality.
Yeah. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Yeah, that's also called CIA.
CIA.
Right?
Yeah.
And we also spoke about data at transit and data at rest.
Yeah.
And then probably we have understood.
Discussed about the hash function as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we spoke about due care and due diligence, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So let me share my screen quickly. Monica, you can always, ask questions wherever required. It's not necessary that you have to ask end of the session. So when we are discussing, in case you have any queries, any doubts, anything, please, you can always stop me. And then, yes, we can discuss about it. Okay, good to start?
Yes, good to start, definitely.
Okay, sure, thanks. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, hope my screen is visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
Yes.
So today we are still in the first module. Just to give a quick overview, to so this is the domain which we have started, the process of auditing information system, and then obviously we have spoken about IS audit standard guideline and code of ethics, right? So these are the very high level pointer which we have discussed. Today, we are about to start from standard and guidelines, right? So when we talk about standard and guidelines, there are basically three categories of standard and guidelines, right? The first one is general categories, and then second one is performance, and third one is reporting, right? When you talk about a general category, this is applied to the conduct of all assignment, right? And deal with the ethics, independence, objectivity, and due care. Now, yesterday also we spoke about what is ethics, right? Professional ethics, which is very important as per the ISACA, right? And competence, we also explained why competency is very, very important, right? Otherwise, competency is not only about knowing how to audit, it's also involved in what kind of controls you have, and then you also need to have proper knowledge on the technical aspects. Otherwise, you will not be able to evaluate the audit results. Then comes the performance, right? So here you have to know the planning properly, the supervision, scoping is important, right? And then obviously the management, and you also need to collect the evidences. Now here yesterday we spoke about assurance as well, and evidence collections, why it is important. But one new word I could see here is the scoping. Now when you talk about any audit scoping is very important. Now for example, if I have to take yesterday's example, Aditi, if you can remember, for payment for financial sector, which one is applicable?
PCI DSS. That is where a credit card, card holders' information is handled.
Right. And only the places where store, process, or transit, right?
Transit, yeah.
Now, yesterday I also given an example that one of the call center who has to be audited for PCI DSS. Now the question comes in, what is the scope? Now
Mm-hmm.
that company may have 3 different branches in Bangalore. One, let's say, in Whitefield, one in Silkboard, one in Hyderabad, for example. Now, do they need to audit all their branches? Answer might be yes, answer might be no. So first, before you start the audit, you have to define the scope. Now we will only pick the locations which is involved in to store, process, and transit the cardholder information, right? There might be chances that their Hyderabad office do not deal with cardholder information. They work in other process. In that case, you don't have to audit that, right?
Correct.
And then in Bangalore office also, all the 1,000 employees do not deal with the same process. Probably only 100 employees deal with the same process, right? So there also you need to minimize the scope, that only these 100 people who sits in the second floor, right? So when we do the audit, we have to do audit for their 100 systems, 100 people, and the process around them. Probably HR will come to see how they terminate, how they hire, all this. So defining the scope is very important. You just can start, okay, you want to do PCI DSS, so this is how. No, not necessarily. So you have to always understand the scope properly. And then last is reporting, right? Again, report is very important. If you remember the CCTV's example yesterday, as I said, if you do not write the proper report in a way which is understood by general people or the other stakeholder, then your report is not good. Report does not necessarily hold some strong English and difficult word. That's a wrong perception people have. People think my report should be very good, so that so strong English so that they understand I'm an auditor. It's a wrong thing. Your report should be very easy, which actually can communicate with all other people, right? So that reporting is very important. So first you have general categories, then the performances, then the reporting. So coming to the next part, when we talk about the standards, right? So standards always contain statements of mandatory requirements. So when I talk about mandatory requirements, so what is mandatory requirement? From the name itself, we understand there might be so many requirement is there. When you, let's say, which example can I take, right? So right now, wearing mask is a mandatory, right? In public places. Due to COVID, wearing mask is mandatory, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maintaining social distancing is mandatory. Whether you maintain or no, that's a different story. But it is mandatory. People can take a fine from you. The government can take fine, or they can put you in jail also, right? But is it mandatory to wear a gloves?
No.
No. Is it recommended?
Yes.
So you understand the difference, right?
Yes.
One is mandatory. So when you do audit, right, there are like, let's say, uh, uh, there are certain controls. See, audit always consists of controls. Yesterday, remember the controls?
Uh,
Controls. High level, I told about controls yesterday. Dipti?
Controls.
We did not discuss in details, but high level,
Yeah.
I spoke.
Yeah. We just discussed what is controls, and by classifying information into various types, and we decide what type of control for each type of information. Something like that we
Right.
discussed.
Monica, any idea about the controls?
Yes, Pranav, I do have an idea.
Okay, can you just tell us what is controls?
Like the techniques that needs to be implemented to make the information secure, using ensuring the triad is followed, like CIA.
And controls, how many different, how much you can, how many different time you can segment in controls?
Not sure. Like I'm not able to follow your question.
Okay,
Uh,
so how many
is
different
it
type of
like
controls?
preventive, detective?
Acha,
Okay,
yeah, three types.
right. Again, preventive detective is a one of the form, but again you can have administrative controls, technical controls, and
Physical
physical.
controls, logical controls.
Okay, fine, great. So coming to the part where I was, okay. So there are certain requirements which is mandatory and certain requirements which is not mandatory but recommended. Okay, so here the standard will contain the statement of mandatory requirements. So probably like into code of ethics and then professional expectations, right? So these are important to audit. You need to have a CISA designation, right? You need to be a part of a CISA group. You need to follow the ISACA standards. These are the main thing. You cannot do the
Mm.
audit until you have met those requirements, like technical expectation, technical competence, CISA certifications, certification. You should be a part of ISACA board. So these are the mandatory things if you perform the audit, right? So
Yeah.
these are certain code which they have given, like 1001 for audit character. Try to remember these standards, okay? I find it a little difficult for myself also to remember, but yeah, if you really look at the slides for probably 5 more days, you will be able to remember. Or probably every day morning once we start our day, I may ask you guys, what is the code for reasonable expectations, right? I may ask you, what is the code number for evidence? So you have to say which 1205. I may ask what is the code for reporting. So you may say 1401, right? So you have to remember the code here. So sometimes they may ask like 1204, and then you have to connect with materiality, right? They may talk about 1205. So you have to talk about the evidences. So this code number is important to remember in certain places. They may ask the questions in a different way. Otherwise, there is nothing I can explain to this, right? But you have to remember. But only because you can see the categorization. One is general, one is performance and reporting. And then obviously in general you have audit character, organization independence, professional independence, reasonable expectation, due professional care, all this same thing for performance and followed by the reporting. So this slide number 16, which I'm going to share, remember that you have to try to remember the code. Clear?
Yeah.
For the exam sake. Apart from that, it's not that important. Okay, next, what is guideline? What is guideline? Now I told, let's say you have to maintain social distancing, right?
Mm.
Now, before COVID, how many times we have heard this word social distancing? For me, it's a new word. In fact, probably I know what is social and what is distancing, but I have never heard people talking about social distancing. Yes, sometimes I have probably heard people saying that I will maintain a distance from this guy. That's because of personal issues, right?
Mm.
Apart from the social distancing was probably a new terms which was massively used. Now, when I talk about, if I would have said, "Hey, Monica, it's COVID. Now you have to maintain social distancing." Now, what would have been thought? I would have thought, okay, I should not meet the person even, right? Now, when you
Mm.
talk about social distancing, there is no proper guideline. Suppose there is no proper guideline in the sense definition of it. Okay, not definition. I would say step by step instruction of it. Right? If there is no step-by-step instruction, if I tell you maintain social distancing, people would have gone crazy in India or entire world. They're like, okay, fine, I want to maintain social distancing, but how would I maintain it? How would I maintain it? If I have to go to a bus, I can see people. Is it a social distancing? Maybe yes, maybe no. If I go to a vegetable shop, it's okay. If I am meeting with my friends and family, is it social distancing? So now anything, any standards or any guideline, when you write it, sorry, any standards or anything, when you ask them to follow, you need to give a proper step-by-step documentation how to implement it. That's called a guideline. Am I clear?
Yes.
Now, when social distancing is a control, mandatory requirements. Now I say, okay, how do you achieve it? 2 feet distance from each other in every places. That's when you achieve social distancing, right?
Mm.
So minimum 2 feet. Anything less than 2 feet is not social distancing. That's called guideline, which actually give you a detailed instruction, right? How to comply with the standards. Now I tell you, let's say I say any user when they join in organization, you have to add their user details in Active Directory and implement two-factor authentication. So this is one of the requirement I have told to the organization. But to support this, I need to have a detailed document how to add them in the Active Directory and how to enable two-factor authentication. Otherwise, everybody, whosoever see the content, they will apply their own logic, right? So if you do not have a guideline, everybody apply their own brain. Understand? Somebody will say, okay, social distancing in my office it is 3 days, 3 feet. Somebody will say, no, no, my country, my state, it is 4 feet. So you have to have a proper guideline. Am I clear?
Yes, clear.
Again, for guidelines, there are certain codes. Try to remember that. Okay.
I just have one doubt regarding like standards and guidelines. So
Yeah.
can I say that while standards are mandatory, guidelines are not so stringent, or they are more like they're not compulsory, or they are just to guide you?
Well, see, standards can be mandatory, can be recommended also. Okay. But
Mm.
mostly standards are mandatory. Sorry, you're right. Standards are mandatory, but guideline is not that. Guideline is not a standard. Guideline is
Mm.
to support. Guideline is to support. See, guideline is what? It's a step-by-step detailed procedure.
So it is to like support the standard, or it's the standard
Exactly.
in details, something like that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
It's a
okay,
step-by-step
okay.
document. If I tell you, you need to open your system every day
Mm-mm.
morning 10 o'clock
Mm.
or every day morning 7:30. So that probably
Oh,
is standard. You have to that's assume that that's a mandatory requirement. Now
okay.
you can be anybody, right? I don't know who you are.
Mm-mm.
Because you're doing it for organizations. It might be your first time you may see a computer. So I have to give a detailed documentation, a guideline, how to open the computer. When you say open a computer, for some people it may be, open the screw and take out the hard disk. That also could be open, right? For some people it might be open this.
Yeah, understood.
You have to give a detailed documentation how to open. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Next, jump into the tools and technique. Okay, so basically there are different tools and technique which will be help you to achieve the outcome of the audit, right? So that might be your white paper, the audit programs, right? uh, any if you specific to any standards, then their toolkit, right? The references, Isaka journal, as I was talking about, every places they will always refer Isaka because you are talking about Cisa, right? So and so and so forth. Probably different IS insurance policies, skills, diligence, right? The roles and responsibilities, the skills of having a proper planning techniques, guidance, a reporting structure. These are the basic tools and technique. Otherwise, for auditor, you don't need a gun to do it. Okay, now look at this. Now you can probably the last question which you have asked. These slides may make it more easier for you, right? So standards you need to follow. There is no other options. You cannot say that look, I will not follow the standard, right? When it comes to guideline, it provides assistance on how the auditor can implement the standards. Clear, Monica, now? And when
Please
you talk
clear.
about when you talk about tools and techniques, it provides an example of steps, right? How to follow the implemented standards, how to implement the standards. Let's say sometimes, if you create a Google form, for example, uh, sometimes it says enter your name, then there is a box, right? Let me just, and then they ask, okay, enter your name, full name here, first name, last name, middle name. So tools and technique also will provide you certain example how it has been done before, so that you can follow the proper practices to implement the standards. Okay, second, our business process. Now this is very simple words. What is internal audit and what is external audit? I'll not explain this. Let me hear from you guys. Anyone?
So, internal audit is something that which the internal team ensures that all the technical and organizational controls uh, that were inside the organization are in align with the processes or the defined standards that we have. It's been performed by the internal teams of the organization. Whereas external audit, it's something that we get from the accreditation bodies or uh, the standard regular auditors or the third party auditors or some vendor audits.
Okay, great. Okay, Monica, I think one thing we have missed. Uh, we have not introduced each other. I just realized that.
Oh,
Okay,
I'm sorry. Sorry, I missed the introductory section, so that
it's
could be the
okay.
case. So,
Just quickly.
I'm on. Yeah. So I hail from Hyderabad, and I work for Accenture, and my expertise into IT industry is 6 years. Um, so I'm working as a security consultant at Accenture.
In terms of vulnerability management.
No, so there's this model called GRC. So as part of that, we support pre-sales and risk assessments of the clients.
Okay, so you're in a
Yeah.
GRC team, probably OC65 risk assessment, all these things. Any other risk
Yes,
assessment you do, right?
yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so and my name is Pranav, and I have been into the industry more than 10 years. So I do corporate training and started my career from offensive securities. Right, so done my all the EC Council certifications starting from CH, CHFI, forensics, ECS, and all this. Then I've done my, all offensive security certification like OSCP, OSC, OSWP, etc. And then I
Okay.
moved to forensics. I did my science forensics and other. And after I gained certain experience, then I moved into GRC as well. Uh, I've done my Cisa, CISM, CISP, ISO, LA, and PCI DSS implemented and GDPR as well. Right. So
Great.
basically, I'm also a cloud solution architecture for AWS. So I'm
Okay.
doing two things. So I just do not train. So I do training and consultation both. And for the training part, yes, I've trained all the big fours and at least Fortune 50 companies, and Accenture is one among them. I do corporate training for Accenture as well. So
Yeah.
that's why my mood is a little mixed mood. So I do implementation, audit, pen testing, forensics, and training is a part of my hobby. So I have been doing it like from the very beginning of my career. Okay, so great. And Dipti is she may tell you probably so that you guys also know each other. Dipti, if you can just probably quickly introduce yourself, if not met Manika before.
Yeah, so my name is Deepthi, and I have one group pending in my CA final. I currently work in a audit firm called RG and Rice. So I don't have much experience in IT audits as such, but I have a good exposure to all sorts of audits. I've been doing it for around like 2 to 3 years. 2 years.
Okay. Uh, Great
Perfect.
profiles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to
So
know.
you, yeah, great. Okay, so fine then we know each other, all of us fine. So it's make us well connected. Okay, great. So now we understand what is internal audit and we understand what is external audit. Internal audit, it means your internal team does it just to make sure that you all the requirement are met. And when it comes to external audit, right? So you actually get into a formal contract and statement of work so that an external auditor comes and sees the things which is implemented properly or no. Now, one of the questions I will ask to whom I can ask, Monica, I'll ask, why do you need to do an external audit when you have a capability to do an internal audit properly?
See, like I mentioned, it's like in general terms, how a certification. So we do have like for an individual, they might have a knowledge because of an experience, but certifying from respective bodies makes other understand that they are well uh, well groomed in that particular thing. So similarly for a company, it's like to get into any project or to make its own environment secure, feel secure, so a certification from the external body is required, like just my perspective.
Right. So it's like that you cannot open a school, you cannot be the student, you cannot be the teacher, and you cannot be the principal who create your own questions and who write your own answer, and then you are the one who judge your own mark sheet, uh,
True.
own question paper, and then give the first mark, right? So you need some third party to evaluate it, right? Isn't it? That's very important, which give you the assurance, which give others the assurance that you are secure. Rather than you saying that I am fine, somebody has to say that you are fine, right? Okay. Now the next thing is audit charter. So what is audit charter? Basically, it's a document approved by those charged with the governance that defines your purpose, authority, and responsibility of their internal audit. And any audit, always remember this line: any audit must be approved by the highest level of management or the audit committee. Most of the time, it is a management. Any audit has to be approved by the management Tomorrow you cannot go and say, look, I'm going to implement this. It has to be approved by the management. What is the engagement letter? It's like an offer letter, right? It's a formal document which defines the IS auditor responsibility and accountability and authority. Now you become an IS auditor, it doesn't mean that you have all the authority. There is a proper scope of document which says what's your responsibility, what is the authority, and what kind of uh, accountability you may have, right? So as we have discussed yesterday, for audit there are very important thing is first you plan, then execute, and then what is the next thing? I forgot, Dipti.
Report.
Report. Yeah. Okay. So now when you talk about audit planning, how do you plan, right? That's a big thing. Planning is a big terms. How do you plan? The first thing is you have to list all the process that may be considered for the audit. Now when I say list all the process, what do you mean by that? Now let's say if I take about the call center example, where I mentioned that there are different locations might be there, different uh, uh, process in terms of handling cardholder data. There might be people who have been doing other job. You need to understand all the process. Now think of a people cases. I said out of 1,000 people, 100 people are handling the cardholder data in Bangalore office, right? When they do so, you need to understand that this 100 people, this 100 people also connected with different people, different things. Now let's say what I'm trying to say is these 100 people are dealing with cardholder data. Now when they join, when they exit, it is very important to make sure that their access is revoked. So who revoked that? That's probably from the IT team. From where the information comes? From the HR team. So these are the different process which you need to consider, right? It is not only these 100 people. There are all correlations between different guys as well, right? So what software they use? Made by the software development team. So you have to consider all the process which you need to consider during the audit. Okay, and then when you talk about the process, you also need to do the quantitative risk assessment and qualitative risk assessment for each of those process, right? And you also identify the overall risk of this process. Now if you do not know about the risk, then you cannot do the audit action properly, and you have to construct a proper audit plan, and then which you find rated high should be prioritize and also represent the ideal annual audit plan. So you should always first identify the process which you need to consider, then you need to identify the risk or define the risk level, and then the one which is on high you need to consider it is more frequent, probably yearly or 6 months, depending on what process you are talking about, right? Now the next question is when to audit. Now any audit plan includes short-term and long-term planning, right? Short-term planning involves all audit issues that will be covered during the year, and when you talk about long-term, right? So it basically something which related to the organization strategic directions. It may not be addressed directly. Let's say right now, what was the short-term goal during COVID time? The short-term was not. I'm not talking about an audit. I'm just giving an example. Now, short-term was like everybody has to work from home. If nobody thought it will go for a year, right? I'm pretty sure. At least I thought it will go for a week or two. Okay. Now, when people started working from home, they have to have a long-term plan. How they want to go? Do they want to do it work from home, work from office, work from a hybrid model? Because that defines the organization's strategic direction, isn't it?
Mm.
right? So when you talk about audit plan, you also always differentiate between the short term and long term, right? As I said, short term you will be covering within the year, and long term means you will take into the account which will actually affect the IT strategic directions. Small decisions, right, or changes does not change the strategic directions. If you say company has to spend 100 rupees, it's a small thing. If you say that everybody has to work from home, that's a big thing, because that actually they change the entire strategic direction. So you have to segment it into these two sections. Okay. Now, when you talk about the short term and long term, audit plan, how do you do that, right? So how do you segregate that based on the new control, right? Changes in risk environment, changes in technologies, change in business process, right? All this you have to consider. If it is a control issues, it might be a short-term plan. But if you talk about risk and environment, technologies and business process, that's a big thing. For example, let's say Bangalore traffic. If you have to consider this, you have to consider it in a long term, right? You cannot consider it as a short term, because you need to think, okay, after down the line 10 years, is it feasible to have a office here, or may not be? Is the location suitable, right? So those things you have to look into considerations. Okay. So next thing is audit planning steps. So what is the first steps? First step will be for understand your business mission. Now, see the way business work. Yesterday I have been giving an example about the shops, right? Every business is not same, though they are into the same segment. When you talk about financial, it's not about bank. Even in bank there are microfinance, there are cooperative banks, there are bank like HDFC, ICICI and SBI, right? There are different objectives everybody serve. So to do that, you first need to understand their business mission, their objective and the purpose, and obviously the processes. If you do not understand, you cannot properly plan it, right? You just cannot go and start. Always remember, I mean, I always believe in that. It's fact that unless you understand uh, what they're into, what they do, how they do, you cannot do a proper audit plan, right? And then obviously you have to review their papers, if they have done before, what all the things are implemented. You just cannot go and start. You have to see what they are already have in place. Anywhere you go, you'll find something is already there in place, right? Probably not up to the marks, but basic things. Out of 10 things, you will find one or two things are already in place by default, knowingly or unknowingly. So you have to review that what is in place. And then you have to identify the policies, standards, procedure, guideline, and their organization structure. If you do not have their organization structure, you cannot uh, find the people who are responsible. Now, when I'm talking about different processes, there are different people also who is responsible for that, right? So how do you do? You always need to get a organizational structure. Okay, and then you have to do a risk analysis to understand and design the audit plan, right? And then obviously you have to set the audit scope, as I was talking, audit scope and the audit objectives, develop the audit approach, assign personal resource to the audit, and yes, engagement logistics you have to see. This is the basic thing. Okay, now these are all are basic things which you probably already know, but it's important that you understand and put it in the thoughts properly, right? Additional considerations, that's our strategies, we can ignore that. Okay, now, so when it comes to gathering the informations, how do you gather the information? That's very important thing, right? Now you have properly planned it. How did you plan? You understood the scope first, right? And then after understanding the scopes, you have identified the business process, you define the risk level, and then you segregate it into long-term and short-term goal. Then you understand their business objectives. And then to understand each process better, you need to interview the key managers, right? I don't know why they use the term interview, but most of the time I actually found it as a discussion. But even when we do it, we always say that interview. So actually, no, it's more about the discussions where you try to understand their business process, and obviously, in case you have any query, you can always ask them, like, how, what is your process to hire somebody? How do you terminate someone, right? What is the evidence? How, so you also need to seek those evidences, right? And yeah, specific regulations you need to identify, and if they have outsourced any of the IT function, that is very important, right? A lot of time what happens, at least in IT culture, you will and see that all the business process they don't own. Like for the bank, they outsource the what is that, background verification process. Even if you talk about Accenture or any other organizations, they do not do a employee background verification. That is always with the third party. Same way, if you talk about the call center for a bank, it is always with third parties. So the third party vendor who is maintaining some of your process, that you need to evaluate and see. So you need to identify that, okay, this is the process which is handled by in-house team and this is handled by third party team. Okay, and you also need to see what all the resource is available for your audit, because suppose you went for audit and there is no one available to assist you, it is very difficult for you to audit. So these are the things which you need to put into the consideration. Okay, next is law and regulation. Now there are certain industries like bank, ISP, right? They are strongly regulated, right? You have to have some, proper way of doing things as per the legal regulations. Now, let's say, for example, uh, one example I can give it to you. For ISP, Supreme Court has already said pornography should not be allowed, right? You have to um, uh, block all the pornography site. So this is a legal regulations. If you are a service provider, you have to make sure that you follow these rules. Now, when you talk about banks, KYC is mandatory. Was it mandatory before KYC? Before 3, 4, 5 years? Before
No, no,
5
it
years?
was not. It was not so mandatory. It was not.
Yeah. Now, if you don't have a KYC, what they do? They block your account. I think they disable your account, right? Because I remember one of my account got disabled. Right, that account I have opened when I didn't open, my parents opened for me when I was in school, right?
Mm.
Obviously after that they don't take care of that account and I was doing it, but obviously that was in SBI, so I didn't bother. And all the phone numbers, email ID, wherever it was, nothing was with me because it's been long time. And then they have disabled the account, and then
Mm.
for some purpose one day, I don't know, probably my dad wanted to give some gift, so he went to the bank and then wanted to deposit some small money, and then they said this account is disabled. Then he called me up and said that you need to go to the bank, submit your Aadhaar card, PAN card, XYZ. So these are basically the legal regulations which is put in place now. You cannot escape that. Like for more than taking 50,000 rupees, you have to submit your PAN card. These are the laws and regulations. You cannot avoid it, right? So you have to look at that. You cannot just go out of it and say that, look, for your business purpose, you need to give at least 1 lakh rupees scans transaction with your PAN card. No, follow the laws and regulations. That's very important, right?
Sorry to stop you here. So, can I just have more understanding, like how we differentiate between a law and a regulation? Because for me, it sounds to be a similar thing.
Well, there is a slightly difference between laws and regulations. I'll explain this to you, the difference between laws and regulations. Now, law is basically like, let's say, for example, which example can I give? Let's say, let me just find an example for you. Um, mm, 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 uh, Let me give an example. Now, see, when you talk about a law, let's say in India, you know IT Act,
Yes, recent.
okay? So
Yeah.
basically, what do we have a cyber security law in India, or IT security is information security?
We don't have a Security Act, we have Information Technology Act.
Exactly. So is it a law or no?
It's a law.
Okay, right? So now see a regulation. So basically, law is what basically which is passed in the parliament and which need to be followed as long as you are in certain country. A law which is applicable to a country, not necessary that it is applicable to other country. Okay, for example, the IT Act of India is not same as IT Act of Canada probably, right? Now, so when it's come to the regulations, so basically there are certain rules. Okay, regulation basically is a certain rules which is again made by the government or any other authority. You get my point? So when you talk about a law, who
Yes,
creates the law? Who creates the laws? It's the government, right?
it's, it's the government, huh?
Government, and obviously they will have the audience passed, and then it will go into parliament live. People are talking about the Privacy Act, right? It's not become a law again. So the laws are, which you have to follow mandatorily, right? That probably our, there are different laws are there. If you remember, I'll give you different examples of the law. Okay. Now, when you talk about the regulations are the rules. Okay. It might either made by the government or any other authority. Okay. To control how something will be done or how you have to uh, probably behave. For example, let's say, let me give you an example of regulations. Um, One example is, let's
RBI
say,
regulations.
sorry.
RBI SEBI regulation.
Yes, RBI regulations. So RBI has a regulations which says, let's say, let me just few days back only few regulation has come on 18th of February, I believe. Let me just open. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
It's still in the PPT.
Okay, good then. I'm just opening one link shared by one of my colleagues. One second. Okay, now I'm just finding the RBI laws. Sorry, RBI regulations. Where are they? Where are they? Just one sec. I'm just going to the RBI website. Yeah. Okay. Okay. RBI has made some. RBI has made some regulations recently for the what is that, UPI, right? There are a lot of Google Pay, all these things, people. Okay, let me see. If you go to rbi.org, you will find a lot of regulations are there, like how to store the cardholder data, what time you can do NEFT, what time you will not be served, what time you will be served. There will be a lot of regulations RBI has given. So RBI is not a government of India, right? RBI is the one who regulate the banking systems. So there are so many regulations RBI has given which you need to follow. Let me just share the screen. Share. Where is that? Share screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
These are the regulations. I also got, my friend has been sending it. Look at this. Okay. This is a guideline on regulation. Can you see that? Can you see?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes.
guidelines means the step-by-step detailed procedure, and regulations a way all the banks should behave, right? So every bank has a way to behave or has to follow certain rules and circumstances. So basically, this is what is regulation all about. So basically, which regulations they're talking about? This is the Reserve Bank RBI circular. This is the regulations. Now, if I click on the circular, now see. So this is the regulation. Just they follow given step-by-step guidance. To follow a step-by-step how to follow things. Are you clear now? Difference between the regulations and uh, laws. Hello, Monica.
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Now, see, there are different laws are there, right? You can probably can talk about National Database Law, and then Voting Rights Act, right? And then probably uh, Economic Recovery Tax. So there are different laws are there across India. So, and different country has their different laws, right? ID law, that law, right? So these are the laws, and then regulations could be by the government or any other bodies who defines how to behave properly or how to implement things or what to implement. These are the five different laws and regulations. Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
clear.
perfect. Let me go to my screen. Yes, sometimes these terms are, when you talk about the audit, what is very important that the terms are very important, to be very honest. Sometimes we use the wrong terms. Probably our understanding is right, but we use a wrong word. Let's say sometimes we say you have to follow the law rules, right? Whereas it's a law. Sometimes we say you have to follow the standards, but it might be an ethics, right? So these terms are very important, in auditing industries, where you follow the right terms in the right way. Okay, so okay, you already have it here. Look at this. So these are the different examples of laws and regulations. US Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA. Yesterday I was talking about it, right? Dipti?
Yeah,
HIPAA?
yeah, we're talking about it. It's for healthcare facilities, HIPAA.
Exactly. For healthcare, you need to have HIPAA. But again, it is not applicable to us. I mean, as means if you go to the hospital, which is next to your home, probably they are not HIPAA compliant because they are not in US, right? But all the health industry in US is mandatory. So they talk about the privacy of the patient data, what all the controls you need to have in hospitals to make sure that patient data is protected. Okay, and then you have SOX, right? 2002 Basel Accords. I don't know what is that. And then protections of European. You have the GDPR also now. So there are different laws are there. GDPR is in applicable in Europe, right? And anybody who is handling the European Union EU data should be GDPR compliant, isn't it? I hope all of you heard of GDPR, right? Have you guys heard of GDPR?
GDPR, I've heard of it. I'm not aware of it, like what it's supposed to do.
Okay, GDPR is basically General Data Protection Regulation.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is applicable for EU, European Union. It's a law on data protection. So basically, it's a new law, not new, in fact, I think it came in 2016. It's a new law for data protection. So what they say is you need to have a proper control of the data. So basically, it's to be very the basically data protection is GDPR is a very big thing, but I can just give you a simple one-liner. So basic things that customers should know what data you are taking, right? In case you have seen, Google has paid fine because they take the cookie. Facebook has been facing a lot of hit because they take the customer informations, right, for advertisement and all. So what GDPR says, customer is the ultimate owner of the data, and you cannot take any data without their consent, right? Sometimes we give a lot of informations to the company, right, and we do not know that they're using our data, isn't it?
Yes.
So GDPR talks about that. GDPR says, and it is only applicable to EU, only European Union. They said that, okay, when you take any data from the customer, either it could be in a form of cookies. Cookies means in a website, whenever you visit, let me show it to you. Whenever you visit a website, they take a lot of data from you in terms of cookies, your locations, this, that. They say you cannot take it. Now you have to you have to take a consent from the customer. Nowadays, a lot of website will say that you have to accept, they will come accept all cookies, right? So you have to accept, or you have to give a consent, or you have to take a consent from the customer. And when customers say delete my data, you should delete it immediately.
Okay.
Now, for example, I'll tell you one thing. What is GDPR? Now, ATM, I had an account, okay, and I said that delete account. When I say delete account, these people has deleted the account, but still I was getting a marketing email from Paytm. It means what? They did not delete all the data. They still have my email ID, right?
Yes.
So these all are against GDPR. Now, for your informations, it was supposed to come in the month of December last. Sorry, this I think June, July. Uh, it was supposed to be implemented in India as well. India's data privacy law. India does not have a data privacy law, but India is become a data-driven country, right? So new privacy laws. I have a draft copy. I think you guys also. I can share the draft copy of India. So it is not passed in the parliament yet. So India also considering to have their own data privacy law. So anybody who is dealing with Indian user data has to follow the law, whether it's a Google, Facebook, or whosoever. Right now, a lot of Indian companies are GDPR compliant, because as long as, even if you have to do a project from Europe, any project you are handling for Europe, right, you need to be a GDPR compliant, otherwise you cannot do the project. So that's become a law. So Indian government already drafted that you know draft copy for Indian data privacy law. Okay, and it was supposed, but because of pandemic, it couldn't, they did not pass this bill yet. So two very key pointer I can remember. One thing is, if you do not follow the laws in your organization, the first year fine is 5 CR,
Okay.
or
So as per
10% of
Indian
your
data
revenue.
privacy.
Yes, 5
Okay.
CR, or I think 1 CR, or 10% of your uh, turnover, whichever is higher. And if you fail for the second year back to back, then it is 5 CR or 3 crores jail, something like that. But baseline is again GDPR, okay? So, but again, So there are different laws applicable for different countries. Okay. Now, to determine an organization's level of compliance, what kind of compliance is applicable to you, you need to identify those government or relevant external requirements dealing with. Now, let's say for e-commerce. Now, do you know that e-commerce has been regulated? At certain point, government has said that you cannot say issued product. You cannot discriminate because different. You cannot discriminate your customer. Some product are issued, some product are not issued. Is it mean that you are not selling a good product? You got my point, right?
No,
Now
it
you say that,
doesn't mean that.
so why do you use the tag called issued and not issued? Okay, I mean these are the, I mean, questions from the government they have asked to the e-commerce. They're trying to regulate e-commerce also, because if you do not regulate a market, it will kill other market. Like let's say, I've been buying vegetables to next to my one vegetable, shop is there. I know this guy for last long time, and I usually go that day. I bought this yellow color capsicum, and um, you know uh, he took 148 rupees per kg from me. Next day, 2 days later, I ordered from Big Basket. I got it in 80 rupees, and he's very friendly with me. And then I went there. I said, like, I'm not going to buy this from you because I'm getting it in 80 rupees. He said, sir, that is not fresh. I said, look, I'm not here to lie. It's fresh, very fresh. And the moment Big Basket comes, if it is not fresh, I can return it also. So obviously, I don't take it, which is not fresh. He said, trust me, I don't get it in 80 rupees. I said, how much you bought it from the market? You sold me in 140 rupees or 140. He said, I bought it from the market in 100 rupees. So what they're saying, so if you do not regulate all these people, right, they'll die. He said, yes, a lot of customers are buying from Big Basket now. I understand they're giving in 80 rupees and fresh, but I don't know how do I survive because I have to give rent. Now you have to regulate. Now what happens? Government has asked one more questions. You cannot just give big discounts, 50% discount. Then Amazon is giving 60% discount. Somebody is giving 70% discount. Somebody is selling, one camera in 1 rupees, big billion day sale, right? You can't do that. It means we are spoiling the industry. Look at what happened when Geo came. People moved everybody to Geo. You need to give a base price that, boss, below that you cannot do, or more than that you cannot do. Airfare, right? I'm just telling you why it is important to regulate airfare. Now it is better. I remember that, see, when I fly to a city, sometimes I have paid 5,000 also. You won't believe, in emergency I paid 51,000 from the same bloody ticket because it was a medical emergency. I had to go. It was very short notice, and I have paid 51,000 rupees, which I regularly pay maximum 5 to 7,000 rupees for that particular route. What is that? Just because it was last moment, you just cannot take advantages of thing, right? That okay, like tomatoes, onions. Sometimes you see tomatoes are selling in 5 rupees, 10 rupees. Sometimes you see you go to the market and buy onion tomatoes at 100 rupees, right? So the petrol, everything. So things has to be regulated. Otherwise, you cannot control the market, right? Everybody will have their own rules. So now government is trying to regulate how the personal data would be handled. They are making a laws for that. E-commerce, they are trying to regulate, saying that look, you have to say if you deliver a product in 5 days, deliver it 5 days for every day. Do not say that is a issued product and that is not issued product. Anything you sell on your platform should be issued. Issued means you are saying that you have done a quality control, right? Quality checks you have done. Why not for other product? Every product on your platform has to be issued, and means quality assurance should be there, right? You should not give such huge discount on the product. And when you give a discount, there should be proper benchmark for it. So these are certain things they are trying to implement, and which you also need to understand when you are dealing with the audit process, right? Now, how you store the data, that make a lot of differences. Where do you store, right? Government is also telling that the Indian data should be within India. You are doing a e-commerce business, being a Flipkart, and you should not, and you are dealing with the Indian users, but you should not say that okay, I'm Walmart, so I'll store all the Flipkart data in US data center. No, that with new Indian privacy law, this is also one of the pointers. They say, okay, whosoever you are, as long as you have Indian user data, Indian data should be lie somewhere within the Indian data center. I mean, within the data center which is located in India. It could be in Mumbai, Chennai, Hyderabad, wheresoever. You should not take out the data outside of India, right? Because tomorrow, what it's only a cable, right? You cut the cable. Now think of a case. Some data center is in Pakistan or China, right? What they have to do? Data is lying there in physically, right? We just say, okay, two parties are fighting with each other. They can take out the data and use it, right? People are
Yes.
saying that even the elections, US elections itself is been controlled with the data manipulations. Data is very, very important. Like for example, I'm not promoting any political parties again, just for an example. Now, who is the major two prominent parties in India? Political party, Congress, BJP, right?
Yes.
Then along with that, they have so many regional parties, CPIM, JDS, this, that. But one thing I really look at this, when you open the social media, do you see the amount of content you get it from Bharatiya Janata Party? Either it might be a negative content against the oppositions or a good content about themselves. Very active. So how they are dealing with? They're dealing with data. They know whom to target. Rather than earlier, I remember people used to come to our home and say, Namaskar, please give us the vote. All the MLAs used to come to door, right?
Yeah.
Now they're not coming. They're reaching you through your digital platform because they know that there are people who use Facebook, who use Instagram. So, so these are changing. Data becomes so important. So you need to know why the data is stored, and then obviously the activities the organization perform. That also you need to understand. Okay, I'll skip this slide. Okay, coming to the business process. Let me drink water. Are you guys all working from home?
Yeah, work from home.
How do you feel? Good, bad, maybe okay?
I think I've gotten used to it. It's been a year, right? So,
Okay. What about Mayuri? Sorry, not Mayuri, Monica.
Yeah, so far it's comfortable, but just that extension of work timings and all, but it's good.
Good. Okay. Sometimes I don't see the sunlight. That's the problem I feel. I wake up and then my
Yeah,
entire
like see, it has both pros and cons. Like with we are not having the regular interactions. There's no exchange of words or knowledge within teams. So that's something disappointing for me. Like we are just in our world, our own world. Whatever we know, we are giving in, just sitting inside it.
and become
It's
so
what
lazy.
I feel. True, very true.
So I sometimes feel like so lazy. Earlier, like to start a day at 9 o'clock to go to office. You need to get up at 7 o'clock, take shower, go freshen up, and then go to office, handle the traffic. But yes, that was also something I never liked to go through the traffic. But nowadays, like if 9 o'clock means you get up by 8:45, and then straight away you start your day without you know and then once you start your day, it keeps on going. Sometimes I forget my lunch also, and then by the time I wake up it's already evening. I said, shit, I did not even see the sun today, right? So it's become so unhealthy. That could be one of the things, but yes, we are also to be blamed for the same. mm. But good that we are saving a lot of time, petrol, diesel, and all this. Okay, let's get back. And the problem is, and training. Trust me, training is something I always believe in interactions. I mean, at least you guys are talking. There are certain trainings where there is no interactions at all. It's very, very difficult. I remember that I think I was taking a training for 7-8 people or around 10 people for PCI DSS from Saudi Arabia. I start 8 hours training. It was every day corporate training. I started my day and I've been talking. There is no just like damn silence. I asked them, "Do you understand?" They don't talk. Say any questions? They don't talk. Then I was like, "Are they there?" Then 12:30 around, I said, "Okay, let's take a break now for 10 minutes." They said, "Okay." For the first time, I heard their voice. And then second session again the same thing. Then I just called the training manager. I said like, "There is no response, no interactions." Then somebody came, somebody from the audience. They said, "Look, you are teaching very well. We don't have any questions. We are understanding everything. If you don't understand, we'll ask. You keep on talking." I was like, "How rude is that?" Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's how I've been doing it. And then you won't believe that what times I've been asking, "Hello, did you understand? Do you have any questions?" At least not even in chatting. They don't even reply. I asked them for 15 minutes, and the 15 minutes intentionally I was quiet. I was not teaching intentionally. It was not break. I thought, okay, somebody will complain. No, at least let me at least hear the complaint that why you are not teaching. 15 minutes I was paused, not talking, kept myself also mute. Nobody's saying anything. After 20 minutes, I started, "Hello, you there? Anybody please respond?" Nobody responded. Then I thought they may not. I sent them a text, "Am I audible?" Nobody's responding. So I thought there might be some issues with my system. So I restarted my system. Once I restarted, it took 5 minutes to come back, right? I got a call from training manager saying that, "Hey Pranav, why you are out of the training?" Uh, I said, these people are not able to hear me probably. Some issues with my. No, no, they are hearing you. Why did you restart? I said, "At least they should acknowledge, right, that they have been hearing me." So that's the thing. Right. Okay. Let's understand the business process. Okay, guys, I will try to. What I'll do is just can I have your email IDs, please, so that I can share the slides with you?
Sure.
Okay,
Shall we drop in the chat here?
yeah.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll just share the slides with you because see, there are some slides which is not important. So, but you need to go through it. I'll try to explain the concept because if I read out the slides, we'll not be able to finish. Just drop the. Let me just make a note of your email ID. I've got. Let me just make a note of your email ID. Okay. Okay, perfect. I'll share this slide with you. Okay. Okay, business process. We'll not talk about it. Business process. Okay. Now we understand business process, right? Do we? Do we understand the business process? Hello.
Yeah, business process, yes.
Okay. The next thing is business application system. Now, when we talk about business application system, so that may, resides in following environments. like could be in e-commerce, could be in email, point of sale, POS machine, right? Then you have your automated teller machines, accounting systems, industrial control systems, image processing, supply chain management, decision support systems. So are you aware of all of them or anything is new to you? That's why that can explain any of the terms which you find it new.
All the terms are familiar.
For both of you?
Yes.
Okay.
Even if not, like I'll just go through those slides and we can discuss that later, right?
Okay, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Now coming to the type of controls. Okay. So when you talk about the controls, the controls may compose of the policies, procedure, practice, and organization structure, right? And why do you have the controls? Remember, why do we have controls? Controls is there to reduce the risk,
Risk.
and none of the control can eliminate the risk completely. Remember that line. Okay. Risk controls are there to reduce the risk. If somebody says implement this control to what is that for, to eliminate the risk, do not take their word seriously. Okay, none of the controls can eliminate the risk. It can just reduce the risk, it can transfer the risk, right? But it cannot eliminate the risk. Okay, so you have to any controls, we talk about why should we have it and why, what we are going to avoid it. Now when you talk about the controls, the main classifications, how do you do it? When you do it in preventive, detective, and corrective, right? So what is the preventive controls? Very important slide, guys. This one you may expect a question in CSSP. So preventive means you detect it before the problem arises, right? So what would be the example of preventive? Preventive means you,
Preventive means it's precautionary before it actually occurs, or you identify
yes,
a risk area and you put a control in place so that there is no issues in it in future.
yeah. Can you give an example?
Um, Preventive
Any,
control.
any in real time, personal life, anything. I'm okay as long as.
For example, in financial books and all, um, as per the Income Tax Act, you're not supposed to accept any cash transaction more than 10,000. So some financial systems, they have a feature whereby you cannot pass an entry of cash more than 10,000. So the system itself would not allow you to do that. It prevents you from passing an entry. Thus, you know that you're not supposed to accept or pay cash exceeding 10,000.
Okay. Um,
So, so this is a control which is in the financial system, which does not allow you to pass entries.
okay. Monica, any
Like, yeah. So the fire extinguishers or the regular mock drills that we conduct is one of the preventive control.
are you sure?
Okay.
Because they do not detect it, right?
Sorry,
Do they detect it?
they don't detect it. Like it's a preventive measure that they perform the regular checks and all. So it is stopping from an incident to occur. So that's where we prevent.
Okay. Now, let's say, for example, weather report, right? Thunderstorm, tsunami, or probably cyclone, right? You get so many alerts, right? There is so many systems are available who monitor the weather, and then they tell that the coast of Andhra may have a high cyclone coming tomorrow, isn't it? So what they do, they basically give you the alert, right? And then as you have mentioned, you do a lot of activities in terms of fire extinguisher, uh, sorry, fire drills, and so these are different preventive measures. So basically, um, when you talk about the preventive controls, these are certainly there are certain controls which help you to detect the problem before they arise, right? And it also help you to prevent that act from occurring, right? So these are very important to have preventive controls. Then coming to your detective controls. What is detective controls? Detective controls is basically the controls which will report the occurrence of the error or incident, right? Can you give an example of detective? I can give one example, probably the smoke detector, right? The moment somebody, go to the aircraft or somewhere, if you just have light a cigarette in the washroom or even in your office, these all are detective, right? So, and what is corrective? Corrective means it will,
It rectifies the threat or something after it occurs. It tries to minimize the damage.
example,
Um,
that water
Like
sprinkler is,
in general, sorry.
yeah, go ahead, please. You see in the big hotels, offices, right? That water sprinkler is there, no? The moment they detect a fire, automatically that opens. That water sprinkler will be there, right? On top of your head.
yeah, on the
Yeah.
ceiling along with the smoke
The
detectors. Yeah.
moment you detect smoke, automatically, if they detect a fire, that automatically will start, right? These are corrective. For
Mm.
example, again, as I said, when you talk about the controls, very important that the every controls also you can fall into three different administrative controls, technical controls, and physical controls, right? Detective controls can be your antivirus also, right? Isn't it? When you talk about technical things, right? Now, when you sign your offer letter, what is that? Offer letter can be a preventive control as well, right? Are you getting
Yes.
my point? These are the main three classification of preventive, detective, and corrective. But they can be again classified into three different categories: physical, preventive, physical detective, and physical corrective. Technical preventive, technical detective, and technical corrective. You get my point?
Yeah.
Yes.
What do I mean by that? A control is not always physical. Right now, when you talk about that smoke detector, that's a physical control, right?
Mm.
But when you talk about an antivirus, is it a physical control? It's a
Technical control.
now when you talk about preventive, when you sign an offer letter and then you say that I'll not steal any company's secret document, that is also a control, right? When you sign the offer letter. But this is not a
Yes.
technical, this is not a physical, this is a administrative control,
Admin.
right? So you need to understand the differences. So in your exam, they may give you a scenarios where you need to identify which is the class, whether it's preventive, detective, or corrective, and also you may need to identify which segments it fall into, either in administrative, technical, and physical. Am I clear?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Very important of these control classifications. And always remember one thing, I repeat it again and again. Any controls, irrespective of if you put all the controls in the world, none of the control assure you that there is no risk. They just reduce the risk. Nobody eliminate the risk. None of the control will eliminate your risk. It will just reduce it. Nobody can say you have no risk. Okay?
Yeah.
So there are different control objectives are there, right? Obviously, one of them would be safeguarding the assets. Are you aware of SDLC? Anyone?
Yes.
SDLC, yes, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so obviously you also have to have a proper SDLC process, so that to make sure that everything is safeguarded. You also need to make sure the integrity of the OS. Yesterday we have seen the integrity, right?
Yeah, yeah, data integrity.
Yeah, and then you have to make sure that every systems are properly in place and their integrity is maintained. And then obviously the identification and authentication of the user is very important. Okay, I'll just skip this few slides. Okay, let's talk about these general controls. That's a mistake I've done. I've put in 2 times. Okay, when you talk about the general controls, like you need to have internal accounting controls. So basically, which talks about the assets and reliability about the financial information, right? Then you have 3 administrative controls that concern about the operational efficiency, right? And then you have organization security policies and procedure to ensure proper use of assets. Right? These are the general controls, right? You need to have a proper security policies, and then obviously a procedure to ensure proper uses. Now, whenever you join any organizations, what they give you after induction, they give you so many video material and document to go through, right? The video like
Mm-hmm.
right? What are they? They're basically trying to make sure you are aware of all those policies and procedure or basic things which you need to know. Irrespective of how many times you have changed the job, every time you go to a new organizations, you have to go through this process, which nobody likes, right? Okay, so okay. Let me see which one is important. Yeah, that's important. Okay, so whenever we talk about information security specific controls, right? Strategy and direction of IT function is okay. Access of IT resource is okay. System development methodology and change control is very important. How the change request is coming, how you are implementing something. There are a lot of times when you go, we see people say, "Oh, look, I got a change request from something, so I have to make changes." How those change request is coming? Who is making it? Is there any formal process of taking a change request? So these are the things you need to look at. The operational procedure, what is the quality assurance procedure is there, physical access controls, right? Now when you talk about physical access controls, it is how do you, what are the physical controls do you have in your office? Example.
Mm, biometrics, ID card, access machines, those sort of things.
Okay, now have you ever seen a queue in front of your office in the time of logging in the main gate?
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes. Why?
People come.
And everybody wait to do the fingerprint or punch, right? And then there is a queue. Now when you talk about physical access control, you also make sure that it is accurate. Okay, if it is not accurate, then there is a problem. Okay, what do you have to make sure that the physical access control is accurate, work very fast. You should not put a system which takes 10 minutes to authenticate, or 1 minute to authenticate. You put your fingerprint, it should be authenticate properly, right? So any physical control, it is not only about being accurate, it should be fast, accurate, and reliable, right? Same way you need to look at the network and communications, and then database administration, and then obviously any other internal or external attacks. So these are the controls you need to look at. IS control is not only about looking at your physical, technical, and physical controls. It's about, you have to look at in database where they store the data, the network communications. So audit is all about people, process, and technologies, right? You need to look at the people who are attached to the people, particular audit process. So once you define the scope, you have to focus on three things mainly: the people who are responsible for that, and the process which they need to follow, and the technology which is being used. If you focus on these three areas along with their respective business process, and once you identify the controls which you need to implement, then you will be in a better position. Okay, risk-based audit planning. Okay, now what is risk-based audit planning, right? So for every audit there might be a certain risk, right, which may go undetected during the audit. Now, do you think that a auditor identify every risk? They should be, but sometimes there is, you have to understand every audit has a risk also. And when I talk about audit risk is something which may go undetected during the course of audit. Okay, so what are the different type of risk? So the first one is inherent risk. So any idea about that? Any idea? New terms. This
Yes, I do have an idea.
So what is inherent risk? You can give a general
So
term.
if
Yeah, please.
so in general terms, even after applying the fixes, it lies within it.
Okay. So basically, when you talk about inherent risk, so you have to consider the risk level without taking consideration is what is already implemented. For example, let's say you have a physical control in place, right? Let's say smoke detector. Now you should not assume that, okay, they have a smoke detector, so if there is any fire catch, it will start a fire alarm or something like that. So when you talk about inherent risk, you should actually consider the risk level without taking into the consideration what is already implemented. Am I clear?
Yes.
Okay. So you should assume that, okay, fine, irrespective of, suppose there is a fan, you should not assume that, okay, there is no problem. In summer, I can switch on the fan and then it will make the room cold. Rather, you should, when you talk about inherent risk, you should consider, okay, this room need a fan with so and so speed, and then in otherwise in summer it will be hot, right? And then probably you later you will look at, okay, so now there is a fan, and then I'll evaluate that. Okay.
Okay.
One is control risk. What is control risk?
It is a possibility that the risk exists, but the controls which are in place might not actually detect it, or they might not gauge it properly.
Right. Example?
Um,
Any. See, as an auditor, right, you don't have to give an example from the corporate world. As long as you understand the uh,
yeah,
areas, it's always good. Any
Um,
example?
yeah. So, for example, corporate offices and all, they might actually have ID card access. But what happens if someone forgets to bring the ID card or something? They actually piggyback behind someone who has the ID card. So, although the control is there, there's a possibility that there might still be unauthorized access, or you might not be able to keep track of everyone who comes in and out.
Excellent. Excellent. What is the terms you used
I
to?
said piggybacking.
Okay. Okay.
And yeah.
Right. Okay, perfect. Next, detection risk.
Detection risk is that there is actually a risk in place, but the audit procedures which you have adapted might not actually detect it effectively.
Come
Or
again?
no, so detection risk is of two types. One is that there is actually a material misstatement or there's some error which is not detected. That is one. Or another one is everything is perfect, but because of a flaw in your procedure, you feel that something is wrong, or you conclude that something is wrong. That is,
Example?
your deduction is not proper. Example, hmm, um, for example, you can take a sample size of above 10,000. Okay. But there is a possibility that, at 9,999, there are actually like 100 transactions which are faulty. So because of your procedure and the sample size you've taken, this 9,999 is you are not deducting it, although the net impact might be significant.
Right. So basically the sampling itself is wrong, or
Yeah,
probably the
your
sampling
audit procedures
was
are
right,
yeah,
but the sampling size was wrong. So that your
correct.
entire outcome and observation become wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and then obviously last you have your uh, overall audit risk, right? Considering everything together. Okay, good. So obviously you need to understand the audit risk and all that basic thing. Okay, now when we talk about the risk-based auditing, so what is the first thing you do? You gather information, then plan. So to gather informations, what you have to do? Knowledge about the business and the industry. Last year audit report is very important as long as it is not the first time they're doing the audit, right? You shouldn't go and say that, look, I'm a new auditor, I don't care about other reports. Show me the, I'll start from the scratch. Now, you also need to observe the prior audit results, right? Otherwise, you cannot start from somewhere. You have to cross correlate, right? This is last year opening balance and this year closing balance, right? Okay, financial information and then obviously regulatory status and inherent risk assessment is something you have to do, right? Then the next is obtain and understand of internal controls, right? What is the control environment, control procedure, and then risk assessment of overall controls, whatever they have implemented that you have to do, right? They may have a different controls already in place. You need to do the risk assessment for all the controls which is in on place. And then performance compliance test. The first point is very important. Identify key controls to be tested. As I said, there are certain controls which may be important and mandatory for them. So you need to identify, and few of them may be not required or optional or probably recommended. So mandatory controls you need to first put in place, and then slowly you can go with the recommended one. And then you have to do the substantive test, and you have to look at the data, do the proper audit, substantive audit, and then you also need to look at the detailed test and look at the different account balances. And then at the last, what you do is you do the conclusion of the audit by creating a recommendation and writing an audit report. Because as well as I said, along with the finding the problem, you also need to give the solutions to them. Okay, we understand what is risk assessment, right? Monica will tell because she is doing risk assessment.
Yes.
Okay, so yes, please go ahead, Monica. Risk assessment. What is risk assessment?
No, I'm asking you. Assessing the risk is the risk assessment in simple terms.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and now we talk about the responses, right? So when you do the risk assessment, what is the next things you do? You identify the risk, right? And then you also need to give the responses.
Yes.
So now there you get a few
True.
terms. As I said, what you can do with the risk. Risk assessment is to identify the risk. And basically what you do is you can always look at the holistic approach and try to assess all the risks certain environment or organizations or control may pose. And then you identify that there are total 10 risks. And also you give a risk rating, right? You also do a risk rating, right? Which one is high, which one is medium, which one is critical, which one is.
Yes. Yes.
So risk rating is to identify the priority and the risk based on multiple factors. Now, once you identify, now what you can do with the risk, you can mitigate, right? How do you mitigate the risk? You can apply a proper control. For example, you identify that, okay, this is a building which may catch fire. So you cannot say that break the building, right? So to minimize the risk, you say that please put a fire extinguisher. That's a risk mitigation. Okay. So
Yes.
for example, you say that a computer system does not have an antivirus. So you say that, oh, look, this system can be infected with a virus. So please install a updated antivirus. This is the example of risk mitigation. Okay. And then there are certain things called risk acceptance. Every time, when you buy a car, you already accepted a risk. Just hold on a second. Sorry, guys. So there is something called risk acceptance. Now there are certain risks which you always accept. For example, now suppose I say when you buy a car, you know that by default you accepted a risk. What is that risk?
Yeah.
What is the risk when you
Prone
buy
to
a,
accident.
yeah? Can you uh, assure that this car will never make an accident? Never, right? But what you can do is you can try to mitigate the risk. How do you mitigate the risk? You put a airbag, right? You make sure that your
Yes.
brakes are fine. These are the risk mitigation. But there are certain risks in life we always accept. Like we'll die one day, but we don't stop living for that, right? So risk accept. So there are certain risks. See, now for example, I'll give you one example. Suppose I have done a risk assessment for Monica's home, and I have identified that Monica has one laptop which cost 50,000 rupees, and there is a broken door. So the thief may come, and there is a chance that the laptop can be stolen. It's a risk, right? Isn't it?
Yes.
Now I have given a mitigation to Monica. I said, Monica, your 50,000 rupees laptop, the door is broken. Anytime a thief may come and take it. It's a very high risk. You have to mitigate that. I said, okay. Monica asked me what is the solution. I said, okay, what you have to do is you have to put a lock on your door, and the lock is costing 1 lakh rupees. What Monica will do? Monica will say, okay, it's better let the thief take my laptop because it costs 50,000 rupees. Because if I have to buy a lock which will cost me 1 lakh rupees, which is the end of the day, you are actually taking more burden in terms of costing, right? So what will do? You'll say, okay,
Yeah.
Pranav, I'm happy with my broken door. In case you can give any other solution, is fine. If not, I'm accepting the risk. Okay. Now, again, there might be a chance. How do you? There is the option of quantifying the risk. Okay, you need to do the quantify analysis, qualitative analysis to identify the value. The laptop may be 50,000, but there may be data which worth 5 CR also, na? So if those calculations you have to do, for examples, let's say one more example of risk acceptance. Suppose you know, there is a Windows operating system, right? And nobody use Windows XP nowadays. Let's say one of the organization is using Windows XP, and you said that please use Windows XP uh, for this one. What is it called? Uh, you are using Windows XP for certain business operations for last 10 years. Now I have assessed it and I said that please change all of your Windows XP system to Windows 7. Right? Now you understand that to change from Windows XP to Windows 7, it will take at least 1 week of time, and during that time your business will be down and you have 1 million customer database who is accessing this system. So you will be complete business loss. So what you will do? End of the day, you are trying to minimize the risk so that your business grows, right? We say no, Pranav, I cannot do that because my entire business will shut down during that time. So what I'll do is I'll accept that risk. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. The next is risk avoidance. What is risk avoidance? Right? You say that this building may catch fire. Okay. So what you can do is you for mitigate it, you put a sprinkler, you put a fire extinguisher. But to avoid the risk, you may tell all of the employees not to smoke in the office premises. The cafeteria you have removed so that they don't have to cook there. You said that in the entire office premises there will be no cafeteria. These are the risk avoidance. So you're taking certain actions which will help you to avoid the risk, right?
Yeah.
Next is risk transfer. Now see, there are certain risks which you cannot directly mitigate. There are certain risks which you cannot accept. There
Sorry to stop you here. Like, I just have a question. So, in considering your previous example for risk acceptance, if the actual loss is less than the like if the loss is less than the actual value, can that can be considered as a risk avoidance as well? Like, we are
come again.
avoiding that risk.
No, no.
So, in a scenario wherein the loss is greater than the actual, less than the actual value,
Loss
so
is
to
greater than
actual value.
okay. Hmm.
So, like the mitigation controls costing for fixing the loss is higher than
Okay.
the original value of the asset. So, in that case, can we just avoid that? Would that be considered as a risk avoidance as well?
No, it will not. That is the accepted risk. See, risk avoidance
Okay.
means you are putting some control. Acceptance means you are accepting it without putting any control.
Mhm.
Risk
Okay,
acceptance
so
has
that's the
control.
difference.
Yeah, risk avoidance will have some control.
Okay. Okay.
So when you're saying that I accept the risk means you are not putting any control. You are agreed to that.
Okay. Okay.
See, if I say there is a risk that it will rain today, right? If you want to avoid it, you cannot avoid it first of all, right? If I say it is going to rain
Mhm.
today, you cannot avoid it, right?
Hmm.
So what you have to do,
Yes. Yeah.
you can mitigate it or accept it. So to mitigate, you will take an umbrella. So that's a
Okay.
control. And if you accept it, it's okay. If it rains, I'll rinse and come back home.
Yeah. Yeah.
For risk acceptance, you don't have to take any controls. Okay. For mitigation and
Okay.
avoidance, yes, control is there. Because when you
Okay.
say, boss, nobody can smoke in the office, you need to create a policies or guideline na, for everybody.
True.
Saying that
True.
don't smoke. Cafeteria will not be there because of so and so reason, right?
Mhm.
Well, vehicles are not
Yes.
allowed inside the office premises. These are the different
Yeah.
risk avoidance controls you are taking, okay? So
Okay.
that it doesn't
Got.
catch fire. Now the last one is very interesting. Risk transfer and sharing. Now this is not a chocolate, no, which you'll share, right? Now risk can be transferred or shared. So now there are certain risks which you cannot mitigate, which you cannot avoid, and which you don't want to accept also. What do? You give it to somebody else. You transfer the risk to someone else. Any example?
Insurance.
Ah, insurance, right? You will die one day, right? Nobody can ignore it, but you don't want to die when your uh, families are there, this one is there, but we never know, life is so uncertain. So what do? We do life insurance. If I die, my family should be taken care. Because what I'll do, I always make sure that I stay healthy. I put airbag in my car. I walk carefully. I'm very cautious, but you never know. Like few days back, this in Uttarakhand, right? You have seen people like how many people has trapped during this flood, right? So you never know. It's like uncertain actions, so nobody can control. I think in New Zealand today, they've given back-to-back three warnings for tsunami. 7.3 magnitude of earthquake is happening in New Zealand and Auckland, right? So you never know. So like that, insurance is one of the perfect example of transferring the risk. So I'm telling you, as of now, yesterday I showed around 21% questions come from this. From the risk, you will get one questions most likely. From controls, you will get one question. So these are important part where you may get some question answer.
Yeah.
Okay, risk assessment process. I'll not tell that. Again, Monica will explain. Risk assessment audit. Let me see how much we have here. Uh, oh, we're still in planning. Come on, when will execute? Let me finish this till planning. Okay. So risk assessment, I'll not talk. Risk analysis. Yes, you have to understand the risk, and based on the risk, you have to give them the recommendation how they can mitigate. Risk acceptance is not your call as auditor. Risk acceptance call lies with the customer. You should not accept the risk on behalf of them. You got it? Because you are not the business owner. So your duty is to tell them all the risk. Whether the risk need to be mitigated, you always need to suggest the risk to be mitigated. You should not encourage them to accept the risk because you cannot quantify the risk properly because you are not the business owner. Am I clear? Until
Yeah.
and unless
Yeah, clear.
the organization owner accept the risk, it is a risk for you, which has to be mitigated, right? Most of the times we say risk mitigation has to be done. Now, whether they want to accept it or transfer it, that's their call. They may ask you for suggestion, but risk acceptance recommendation, you should never give it to them. That's their call. If you feel it is justified, then only you should accept it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, this is the risk management process. Perform, you do the risk evaluation, then you identify the business objectives, then informations which supports the BO, and then you do the risk assessment, then you do a risk mitigation, then you do a risk treatment. That's the same cycle which you have been talking about in a graphical image. You have it here. Types of audit. Okay, shall we take it today? Okay, let me finish this. Okay, now when you talk about audits, there are compliance audit, financial audit, operational audit, administrative audits, and IS audit. When you talk about the compliance audit, now compliance audit is very much with some specific control test, and then it has to be demonstrated as to some any regulatory or industry standard. Yesterday I was talking about PCI. You can see today PCI here, which has been regulated by whom? Visa, Master, Rupee, Amex, right? So they're the one, they said that you have to be PCI compliant. So they are the one who is regulating that. They are industry standard. Okay, this is applicable for payment card industry who store, process, or transit credit, no, not credit card holder information. Then again, HIPAA, it is applicable to the companies which handle card healthcare data. Not necessarily it has to be hospital, but anybody who handle healthcare data. Like for example, Farm Easy, right? If they would have in US, they need to be HIPAA compliant. Then we have financial audits. After compliance audit, we have financial audit, right? So the purpose of the financial audit is to assess the accuracy of the financial reporting, and then it's often is little detailed. You know, auditor try to understand what they try to understand. They try to understand probably the transactions, and then financial information, how much integrity is mentioned, the reliability, whether there is any fraud transactions. All this they do during the financial audit. The statements, the closing, the opening. Our Dipti can tell us better about the financial audits, right? Followed by our operational audit. So, Dipti, what do you do in financial audit?
So financial audit will usually be in, for a company, it will be as per the Companies Act. So we just ensure that all the data in the balance sheet and P&L are justified, and we pick up samples and we follow transactions from the beginning till how it is reflected, and then we check compliance with legal provisions and laws.
Exactly. Okay. So then we have operational audit, right? So operational audit is to evaluate the internal control structure, and then also probably any IS audit, which you talk about the application controls and logical security systems, also part of operational audit. And then you have administrative audit. So what administrative audit does, basically to assess any issues related to the efficiency of your operations within the organizations. Let's say how good is the employee working, do you need this much of employees, their benefits, their problems. So basically it's all about the efficiency of the operational productivity within the organizations. Okay, then we have our IS audit. IS audit is to make sure that the information system, the related people, the assets, the data, everything has their availability, integrity, and confidentiality maintained properly and working in a effective way. Okay, that's fall into our IS audit. And then we have our forensics audits. Forensics audits is basically it is done to identify if any fraudulent actions in terms of financial transactions, malware, or any other things which has happened to which help you to identify if there is any probably uh, I mean basically forensic audit help you to identify or discover something which has gone wrong, and it helps you to identify how it went wrong and why it went wrong. And forensics audits happens after the incident, not before the incident, right? And forensics audits sometimes it is required when it is in a court of law, so that you have to submit proper evidences, and to get those evidences you have to do the forensics audits to identify the real issues. An integrated audit approach is the combination of your financial and operational audits, right? So again, you try to perform the overall, assess overall objectives of the organizations, and the related financial and other assets, to see that if they are efficient and compliance to the requirement. So just to give you, so these are the different examples. One is compliance audit, financial audit, operational audit, administrative audits, IS audit, forensics audit, integrated audit. So which audit you are doing right now, Dipti?
So right now I am doing a financial audit as well as
Okay,
an internal audit.
internal audit, which one?
Um, Internal audit, it's kind of about the operational aspects.
Okay, fine. So you are
Yeah,
talking about more in administrative or operational audit. Operational audit, I would
yeah,
say.
yeah,
And what
yeah.
about Monica?
So I'm also the part of internal audit, so wherein we check the standards were specific to ISO 27001, and also
Hmm.
I attend few of the compliance audits, just few of the audit queries related exclusive to the information security wing of the organization.
So mostly you are doing compliance audits and IS audit, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. So we're just done with our planning. We are here to do our execution and reporting. So tomorrow, once we meet at 7:30, we'll do our execution and reporting. Okay,
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I'll wind up here, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow, 7:30 in the
Yeah,
morning. Yeah, please.
yeah. Before this, so can I just have a material for the yesterday's sessions? I'll just go through it because I thought it was just an introductory, but I see some good things were discussed from the Deepti's like she was sorry Deepa, she was explaining something.
Deepti.
Sorry, Deepti. Yeah.
Okay. No problem. You after the training, everybody will get 2, 3 more names. I already given Monica some. I told her Meenakshi or something. I forgot.
Mayuri. You said
Mayuri.
Mayuri. Yeah.
And Dipti already got a name called Deepa. So already we have identified 2 new names. So I
See,
think
like I regularly work with my colleague Deepa, so it keeps coming. Like
no
that's
problem.
more familiar. Sorry, Deepti, for that.
No worries. Okay. So yeah, sure. I'll just share the material with you guys. I have got your email
No,
ID. I'll
no,
just
it's
drop
okay.
the email. And then tomorrow, I'll see you guys at 7:30 in the morning. Okay. Thank you guys. Let's get tomorrow.
Thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Bye.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah.